welcome to a new series about the legends of service research, a series where we talk with the people who founded the field and were there when it all started. I'm happy to welcome as our first guest, Leonard Berry. Len Berry is Distinguished Professor and Regent Professor, MB Sale Chair in Retail and Marketing Leadership at Mays Business School, Texas A&M. He won all major national marketing awards, and I just checked recently, he passed the 200,000 mark for Google citations. So Len, thank you for being here and taking the time.
Werner, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me today.
I think if you hear what you all have done already, there's one prominent question. How do you do that? How are you so successful? Do you have a particular method how you do research and how you write, or is there any trick?
Well, I don't have any secret magical formula, Werner. I work hard. I love the work I do, and so when you love the work you do, when you have a passion for the work that you do, working hard is not hard. And I always write. I'm always writing. I'm always working on something. There's no downtime. I always have questions I want to pursue. I work with really good people. I'm very careful with choosing the teams I want to be on. I want to work with people that are smarter than me in many ways, and that have a strong work ethic as I do, and have common values. And I've been very fortunate to work with really, really good people over the course of my career. And so I think that's been a key as well.
I wondered already, are there any special characteristics of research colleagues that you value the most and say, this is important when I work with someone together?
Because I get very passionate about the work and working with people who share that passion, who can't wait to get up in the morning and start working again on our mutual project is really important. Writing well is obviously important, and so I like to work with people that write well. I like to work with people, as I mentioned, that will meet their timelines, meet their deadlines, be reliable. And I've been very fortunate over the years to work with people.
Okay. So you are known for being one of the first researchers in service research. So I wonder a little bit, how did it all start? Or how on earth do you come to the idea to research something that during that time didn't exist, at least not as a research topic? So what caused you to thinking about researching services?
So, Werner, I was a brand new assistant professor, and I knew nothing of services marketing because when I got my doctorate in 1968, the field of services didn't exist. And not one time in my doctoral studies did any professor ever utter the words services marketing. So the marketing I learned as a doctoral student was manufactured goods marketing. And so it wasn't until I was 2 or 3 years into my assistant professorship and I was studying consumer behavior that the phone rang one day, and it was a man from the American Bankers Association in Washington, D.C., and they were interested in having a textbook written on bank marketing. There was no such book, and the banking industry was beginning to discover marketing, and they needed a book. And this man that called me, his name was Louis Capaldini, he called me, and he had already talked to Jim Donnelly, a marketing professor at University of Kentucky, about doing a book and see if Jim would be interested in doing a book, and he was going to recruit someone else. And that someone else was me. And so Jim and I got on the phone and decided, yes, let's do this book. We didn't know each other at the time. It turns out that we did do the book. It was published in 1975. It's called Marketing for Bankers. Very first book ever written about bank marketing. And Jim and I became best friends for the rest of the rest of our lives. He unfortunately passed away several years ago. And a very important conversation occurred in the late 70s with Eric Lingard. Eric was a French professor, and he was one of the early pioneers in services. And he had brought a group of French bankers over the United States to study for a week, and I was one of the speakers in New York City, and he took me aside at a break, and he said, "Len, you've been spending all of this time working on financial services. It's time for you to spread your wings to services in general." He said, we need to build this field of services. You've got a good start with financial services, but it's time to spread your wings. And he convinced me to do that. That made sense. And in 1980, I published my first paper on services in general. It's called Services Marketing is Different. Everything before that had been about financial services. Yeah. And I was off and running. I was enthralled by this new field, these fascinating questions, this new journey that I was about to embark on. And that was in 1980, that publication came out. In 1982, I wound up at Texas A&M, and waiting for me there was Parsu Parasuraman, Valerie Seithaml. And then the rest is history. Maybe we'll get to some of that history as we go forward today, but that's how I got started. I'd like to, if it's all right, Werner, I'd like to shift and talk about how the field started. Because there's a fascinating story about how services marketing as a discipline began as a part of the overall marketing discipline. So services marketing as a field was demand-driven. It was demand-driven. It was executives in various service industries who had been trained, just as I had been educated, in manufactured goods marketing, who were in marketing positions for service companies, who were asking academics, help us market these intangible products that we have to sell, that our careers depend on. What we learned in school and what we're reading in the textbooks don't help us very much. Help us with the questions that we have. And so it was really the executive sector that was a big part of the impetus to look at services marketing as an academic discipline. And there was a lot of resistance in the beginning from marketing academics. And, traditional marketing professors saying marketing is marketing. There's really not that much difference, maybe some nuance of difference, but nothing important. We really don't need a new field. You're reinventing something that already exists. So there was a great deal of pushback, and but with this executive demand, there were a couple of key institutions that helped the field start, and then there were some key academic and executive players that produce the content.
Can you mention some names?
Yes. So the three key institutions that played a pivotal role in the creation of services marketing, one was the Marketing Science Institute, because it brings executives, managers, marketing executives from big companies together that sponsor it, who then align with research they need from the academic community. And they were asking for research related to services. And it was the Marketing Science Institute that sponsored 12 years of research that Parsu and Valerie and I did on service quality. 5 phases, 12 years. It, at the time, was the longest running ever MSI study. And we worked with executives who helped us, who guided us in that research, from Bank of America, from Allstate Insurance, from Ryder Trucking, from a variety of other service companies that helped us. IBM was a big part of that.
Yeah.
And so MSI played a big role in the beginning. The American Marketing Association played a big role. The very first services conference held in the United States was held in 1981 in Orlando, Florida, sponsored by the American Marketing Association.
Okay.
The first conference ever on services was in the United States, was the AMA conference. It was what is now referred to as the Winter AMA. The Winter AMA started as a topic-specific conference every year. Every year was a different topic.
Yeah.
So one year it might be business to business marketing, one year it might be branding, and so forth. And the year that I was Vice President of Marketing Education, I had the opportunity to pick the topic for the 1981 Winter Conference. And I picked services marketing. And that was a seminal event because the folks who were doing services research in Europe and who were doing services research in America, we were just starting out, all of us, we met for the first time. So I met Evert Gumason from Sweden for the first time. I met Christian Gronrus from Helsinki, Finland for the first time. We were working on common interests. It was exciting. I met Lynn Shostak, who was at Citibank, and she was a Harvard Business School graduate, and she was our keynote speaker at that conference. And she held up, in the middle of her speech, she held up a can of Campbell's soup. And she said, "This is what I learned to market at Harvard Business School, getting my MBA. But I'm a vice president at Citibank, and I don't market Campbell's soup. I market financial services, and I need answers. I need help. I need guidance."
Taking your experience to, let's say, founding a field, of course, you started with that and it was going over multiple years. You told already how important the international connection was, how important the business context is, and how important interdisciplinarity is. When you look back, is there anything that you would say, in a way it's a classical question, is there anything that you would have done differently to boost it even better?
I can't think of anything that we would have done differently. I'm sure there were things that we could have and should have done differently, Werner.
Yep.
But I think we were really lucky.
Okay.
Right time, right place, right people. Had we started before the 80s, there wouldn't have been this industry clamor. The services economy was really building in the late 70s and the 80s. There wouldn't have been this clamor, this demand from the business community had we started earlier. And You know, I think that having the support of MSI, having the support of AMA was so helpful. There was one other institution I need to mention that really helped propel services in the early going and continues to do so, of course, and that's Arizona State University.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, they made a major difference, and it was brilliant strategic positioning for ASU because it brought the business school to the global forefront of being the leader in services marketing at that time. And so kudos to Steve Brown and Mary Jo Bittner and all the others who were involved in creating that center. So you had these three institutions that were really involved from the beginning, the MSI, the AMA, and the ASU. And then you had the academics and the industry people that actually did, wrote the textbooks, wrote the first articles, taught the first courses, spoke at the first conferences. And I'm at risk at naming some names, but I will because I'm going to miss some people, and I apologize in advance for that. But some of the founders deserve mention, and I'd like to mention them because I have so much admiration for this group. I mean, these were pioneers. There was a lot of backlash.
Yeah.
There were some young people who were being told by their dissertation committee members, don't you dare write a dissertation on services. I don't know it'll go through. That field doesn't exist.
Okay,
you need to be more cautious and write something that we're sure is going to make it through the process. And people like Gumason and Gronrus, Mary Jo Bittner. Mary Jo Bittner is one of the pioneers of services. She was a doctoral student at the time.
Yeah. Wow.
One of the biggest contributors to our field. She started as a doctoral student, and she wrote a services dissertation.
So, Len, your seminal papers, especially in the beginning of your career, you worked very often with Parsu Parasuraman and with Valerie Seidhammer on that. A lot of these seminal papers are done together in this collaboration. It looked to be in the first years very as one cohesive team, the PCB team. So what was so unique on that team, maybe in comparison to change teams or make a lot of mix?
What was unique about Parsu and Seidhammer and Barry was, number one, we liked each other a lot. We enjoyed working with each other a lot. Number two, we all had strong work ethics. We all were willing to travel because we did a great deal of field research for the service quality research stream. We did a lot of focus groups. We went to a number of company sites to interview their employees and traveled a great deal to MSI to meet with the executives that guided us. And so all three of us were willing to get in an airplane and sometimes, be gone for a weekend or whatever it took to get the work done. And we complemented each other in our skills. That was also very important, Werner. Parsu, brilliant methodologist, a brilliant modeler. Neither Valerie nor I are modelers. And the first pictures of the GAPS model, Parsu brought in handwritten on a piece of white paper into one of our meetings in a conference room, and that was the first drawings of the GAP model.
Okay.
And I remember when we drew the zone of tolerance, we drew it on Valerie Seidhammer's kitchen table in North Carolina in her when we were all there on a working weekend, and we sketched out the zone of tolerance. And so Parsu had skills that Valerie and I didn't have, but we had skills that he didn't have. We were all complementary. Valerie had a very strong background in consumer behavior. She was a former advertising executive, and so she brought a lot of practical business experience as well as her behavioral background to our work. In my case, I think I helped with some of the business connections we made, and I'm just very comfortable working with the business community. I'm very comfortable doing an interview. I'm very comfortable leading a focus group. I think conceptually, and so I really enjoy conceptual work and thinking in terms of pictures, and I don't draw them as well as Parsu, but I think that way. Yeah. We all brought something to the table to strengthen one another, and so I think that was really a key as well. And finally, we were passionate about the topic, services marketing in general and service quality in particular. We felt a real deep sense of passion, and talk about right people, right place, right time. Valerie and Parsu were the right people to work with. They were wonderful partners for me. The early 80s, the field of services marketing was just starting, and so we conceptualized, and then we found a way to measure through ServQual service quality, and that had not been done before. So we were the timing was perfect.
You were a mentor for so many people in our discipline. So I wonder, who would you call is your mentor? Did you had a mentor? Anyone that you look back in the early days and that was someone before that all started who helped me tremendously?
Yes, I have had several really important mentors, and I hope you'll allow me to mention more than one.
Okay. Yeah.
All right, because
it's your time.
Yes, one of the most important mentors that I've had from a distance, although we've developed a wonderful friendship over the years, is Philip Kotler. Philip Kotler had a great influence on my career, on the way I wanted to manage my career. His work, his writings inspired me. And I've just learned so much about marketing from Philip Kotler, but I've also learned a lot about managing your career in the right way, doing things in the right way, being generous. He's a very generous man in terms of being willing to help other people, including me, when I was just getting started. I met him when I was a doctoral student. I went to the doctoral consortium, and he was one of the speakers. That's where I met him and first heard him speak, and he's been my role model ever since. Another role model for me was Stanley Marcus, who was the son of the founder of the department, the specialty store chain, Neiman Marcus. And when I came to Texas, I had read his book, Minding the Store. And I was inspired by the book. It was one of my first books I read about service. That book was published like in 1975. And it was the story of Neiman Marcus and how they specialize not in merchandise, they specialize in the individual customer and customizing the service. And that was really my first academic exposure to service in 1975. Was reading that book. And so when I moved to Texas in the early 80s, he was a retailer in Texas. And I decided I was going to meet him. I just was going to make it happen. It was on my bucket list, my early bucket list. And I did. I got him to Texas A&M campus to speak, and then I went to Dallas and spent some time with him, and then we became good friends, and I spent a lot of time with him over the years. He passed away in his mid-90s, and he's one of the great people in my life and one of the great people that I've learned from. He inspired me as well. And finally, and then very quickly, I've had since I've turned into doing more health research, I've had and really needed mentors to help me get started in healthcare. And early on, I had to learn how to write for a medical journal. I had no idea how to write an article for a medical journal. The culture of publishing in a medical journal is so different from the culture in publishing in a business journal or a marketing journal. And two editors of medical journals took me under their wing and mentored me, took an interest in this strange person from business school who wanted to learn how to write for medical journals. And they read drafts of my early papers and gave me feedback, and became friends. And I owe a great debt to these two editors. One is Frank Davidoff. He retired now, but he was editor of Annals of Internal Medicine. And the other is William Lanier, both medical doctors. And he was editor of the Mayo Clinic Proceedings when I was at Mayo Clinic. He's since retired from that position as well. So I've been very fortunate in having some great mentors. They've meant a lot to me.
I know people, when they look on your complete career so far, you see this time where you are with other colleagues are founding the field with seminal papers, more service in general, and then this section of the healthcare. So people sometimes might ask, is Len Berry still a service researcher, or is he more a medical researcher?
I am as passionate and as committed and as dedicated a service researcher as there is. It's been my life's work academically. I started in my service research in a specific industry, financial services.
Yeah.
And then I broadened my wings for the majority of my career into services in general, as we've discussed. And then in probably the last quarter of if we think in terms of 4 quarters in football, the last quarter of my career, I again went to a more specialized part of services, and that is healthcare.
You have done an incredible career, and if I made my math right, it's something a little bit over 50 years already you're doing research. So, and you founded an own field together with other people, but really one of the founding fathers of this field. So what advice would you give someone who is, let's say, on a similar step that you were at the beginning of the 70s, means at the end of a PhD project, at the beginning of an academic career as an assistant professor or something else? What should they do? What is your most favorite advice for a career?
Yes, my best advice is work on important problems. Work on really important problems that many people will be interested in, that will address issues of great consequence, and develop expertise in these areas, these problematic areas that you choose. and keep building that expertise. And when I say work on important problems, it seems daunting at first because important problems, poverty or substandard housing or the differences in educational quality or healthcare issues, these seem so daunting and big. But you know what you do is you break the important problems down into little pieces. And you do one piece, and then you do the next piece, and then you do the next piece. And all the while you're learning more about this field, and all the while you're building a stream of research, and all the while you're becoming an expert in an area that society really needs your expertise in. So I always tried to work on problems I felt were important. It may sound trite. I hope it doesn't. But I've always wanted to work on problems that would help mankind. That's my number one piece of advice. My number two piece of advice is work on your writing, your craft of writing.
Yeah.
I've prided myself in my career of always trying to improve my writing. I had a really wonderful professor in my PhD. He was a communications professor, and he was on my dissertation committee strictly to help me improve my writing. Most PhD committees don't have a resource like that, but I was lucky to have that. So important problems and work in your writing, because people are more likely to read work that's well written.
Maybe let's talk again more broader about the service field. So thank you for tuning in. This was the first part of my interview with Len Barry. The second part will be posted soon, and you will find it in the upper right corner right here. I hope you enjoyed the interview so far. Let us know in the comments what you think. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel. So I'm looking forward to see you in the next video. Till then, bye bye.